There are war movies, and then there are legends. Some films entertain you for 2 hours and fade away. Others become part of cinema history forever. The Great Escape belongs to that second category. Released in 1963 and packed with unforgettable performances from Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, James Garner, Richard Attenborough, and many more, this classic war epic didn't just tell a story about prisoners trying to escape a camp during World War II. It created moments so iconic that generations of movie fans still talk about them today. You probably remember the roaring motorcycle chase, you probably remember the tense tunnel scenes, and you definitely remember that unforgettable musical march. But what most people don't know is that the story behind the film is just as fascinating as the movie itself. Behind the cameras were real former prisoners of war. Several actors carried actual wartime trauma into their performances. Hidden production secrets changed movie history forever. And one famous stunt became legendary even though the star everyone credits for it never actually performed it. Tonight, we're digging deep beneath the surface of this Hollywood masterpiece to uncover the stories, secrets, behind-the-scenes drama, incredible true events, and unbelievable details that most fans have never heard before. Some of these facts are inspiring, some are heartbreaking, and some are so unbelievable they sound completely made up. But every single one reveals why The Great Escape still stands as one of the greatest war films ever created. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and prepare to discover the hidden history behind one of the most beloved movies of all time. Here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up. Number 1. When audiences first watched Steve McQueen race across the countryside during the famous motorcycle chase, they assumed they were simply watching one actor outrun enemy soldiers. But hidden inside that legendary sequence is a detail many viewers still miss even after watching the movie multiple times. Steve McQueen was actually playing 2 different characters during the chase. That's right. Director John Sturges allowed McQueen to put on a German uniform and ride as one of the pursuing enemy soldiers during parts of the sequence. Through clever editing and camera work, McQueen literally appears to be chasing himself. And the reason this happened is actually pretty simple. McQueen was obsessed with motorcycles, long before becoming a Hollywood superstar. He spent countless hours racing bikes and performing dangerous riding tricks. Many people on set believed he was just as comfortable on a motorcycle as he was in front of a camera. In fact, several crew members later admitted that McQueen often looked more excited during the stunt rehearsals than during the acting scenes. The production team quickly realized something important. Very few stunt riders could match McQueen's riding ability closely enough to make the action scenes look believable. So instead of constantly hiding doubles with tricky camera angles, John Sturges leaned into the situation and let McQueen ride for both sides. If you go back and carefully watch the chase scene today, one of the German riders moves with unusual confidence and control compared to the others. That smooth riding style gives him away. That's not just another stunt performer. That's Steve McQueen secretly appearing twice in the same sequence. It's one of those hidden movie details that completely changes the way fans watch the film forever. And honestly, it fits perfectly with McQueen's larger-than-life reputation. Even when playing the hero, he still found a way to become part of the pursuit itself. Number 2. One of the reasons The Great Escape feels so realistic is because the filmmakers had an extraordinary secret weapon behind the scenes. A real-life escape expert. The character played by Charles Bronson, known as Danny the Tunnel King, was inspired by a real man named Wally Floody. And unlike many Hollywood productions that only loosely consult historical experts, Floody actually spent more than a year helping shape the film. This wasn't just a casual consultant stopping by once or twice. He was deeply involved. During World War II, Wally Floody served as a Canadian pilot before being captured and sent to the infamous prison camp known as Stalag Luft III. Once inside the camp, Floody became one of the chief tunnel engineers for the real escape operation. Think about that for a second. The tunnels shown in the movie weren't simply fantasy creations dreamed up by screenwriters. Real prisoners actually dug underground passages beneath heavily guarded prison camps while risking execution if they were discovered. And the man helping recreate those tunnels for Hollywood had lived through it himself. Floody reportedly walked through the sets inspecting every tiny detail. He advised the crew on tunnel size, construction methods, support beams, air systems, and even how prisoners secretly removed dirt without guards noticing. That level of authenticity gave the film a completely different atmosphere. Actors weren't just pretending inside imaginary tunnels. They were working inside recreations approved by someone who had survived the real thing. Many cast members later said that having actual former prisoners involved in the production changed the emotional tone on set. Suddenly, the movie didn't feel like ordinary entertainment anymore. It felt personal. And before we continue to the next unbelievable fact, if you're enjoying this deep dive into classic movie history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos. It really helps the channel grow and lets us keep making more detailed stories like this one. Now let's continue, because the next fact reveals something incredibly intense about Charles Bronson himself. Number 3. Sometimes actors pretend to be afraid, but in Charles Bronson's case, the fear audiences saw on screen wasn't acting at all. It was real. One of the most memorable parts of the movie involves Danny struggling with severe claustrophobia while crawling through the tight underground tunnels. His panic feels raw, his breathing feels authentic, and the terror in his eyes feels painfully believable. That's because Bronson genuinely suffered from claustrophobia in real life. Long before becoming a Hollywood icon, Bronson grew up in poverty in Pennsylvania and worked in dangerous coal mines as a young man. Imagine spending long hours underground surrounded by darkness, heavy rock, and suffocating spaces. Those experiences left permanent emotional scars. According to several reports from people who worked with him, Bronson never fully overcame the anxiety created during those years underground. So when director John Sturges cast him as the Tunnel King, Bronson wasn't simply imagining what claustrophobia might feel like. He already knew. Every nervous glance, every drop of sweat, every shaky breath. That emotional reaction came from genuine personal experience. Ironically, the very trauma that haunted Bronson throughout his life helped create one of the most emotionally convincing performances in the movie. Viewers could sense the authenticity immediately. Even today, many fans consider the tunnel scenes among the most suspenseful moments ever filmed in a war movie. And knowing the truth behind Bronson's performance makes those scenes even more powerful. Because behind the camera, the actor wasn't just portraying fear, he was confronting it. Fact 4. Here's a detail that surprises many movie fans. Donald Pleasence, the actor who played the gentle forger Colin Blythe, had actually been a prisoner of war during World War II. That means one of the men acting inside the prison camp scenes had truly experienced life inside a wartime prison camp. Before becoming famous in Hollywood, Pleasence served in the Royal Air Force as a wireless operator and gunner. During the war, his aircraft was shot down and he was captured by German forces. He spent time inside a real prisoner camp until the war finally ended. Now imagine what that must have felt like years later when he walked onto the giant movie set recreating similar conditions. According to stories from the production, Pleasence became emotional after seeing how realistic parts of the camp looked. The fences, the guard towers, the barracks. Some memories never fully disappear. Crew members later revealed that Pleasence occasionally offered suggestions about prisoner behavior and camp details based on his own experiences. At first, some people behind the scenes reportedly brushed off his comments. But over time, the filmmakers realized something important. This actor wasn't speaking from imagination. He had lived through it. That hidden layer of authenticity quietly shaped many scenes throughout the film. And it also explains why Pleasence's performance feels so human and emotionally grounded compared to many war movies of that era. His character doesn't feel like a Hollywood stereotype. He feels like a real person trying to survive impossible circumstances. Because in many ways he was. Number 5. Today, the motorcycle chase is probably the single most famous moment in the entire movie. But here's the surprising truth. The real historical escape never included a motorcycle chase at all. That entire sequence was added largely because of Steve McQueen. McQueen reportedly pushed hard for more action involving motorcycles because he knew audiences would love it. And honestly, he was right. The production team eventually agreed and built one of the most iconic action scenes in cinema history. But there was another interesting problem. The motorcycle used in the film wasn't historically accurate. The movie takes place during World War II in the 1940s, but the bike itself was actually a modified 1962 Triumph TR6 trophy. To make it appear older, the crew removed modern details and changed parts of the design to resemble wartime motorcycles. Even with those modifications, motorcycle enthusiasts quickly noticed the difference. Still, nobody really cared. Why? Because the scene was unforgettable. Sometimes great cinema isn't about perfect historical accuracy. Sometimes it's about creating moments audiences never forget. And few moments in movie history are more unforgettable than watching Steve McQueen racing across open fields while trying to outrun capture. The scene became so legendary that many people today remember the motorcycle jump even if they've never watched the full movie. That's cultural impact. And believe it or not, the story behind the famous jump gets even crazier later in this video. And if you're enjoying these behind-the-scenes secrets so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because we've got plenty more unbelievable movie stories coming your way. Number 6. Most people imagine movie stars relaxing in trailers between scenes while production crews handle all the hard work. But during the making of The Great Escape, things worked very differently. The movie required massive amounts of realistic-looking barbed wire for the prison camp set, and instead of buying expensive ready-made materials, the production team came up with an unusual solution. They made it by hand, piece by piece, knot by knot. Crew members later revealed that nearly everyone on set helped create the fake barbed wire during downtime, including actors, assistants, technicians, and even catering staff. Yes, even major stars like Steve McQueen reportedly joined in. The process was slow and repetitive. Thin strips of black rubber had to be carefully tied around long rubber cords to create the appearance of dangerous metal wire on camera. Hour after hour, the team sat together building miles of fencing for the prison camp. And honestly, that detail says a lot about how different filmmaking was back then. Today, many productions rely heavily on digital effects and computer-generated backgrounds. But in the early 1960s, realism often came from physical craftsmanship. If the filmmakers wanted a giant prison camp, they built one. If they needed miles of fencing, somebody had to physically make it. That dedication to practical detail helped create the grounded atmosphere audiences still love today. When viewers look at the towering fences surrounding the camp, they don't see fake movie props. They see a believable prison environment. And hidden behind every fence line is a strange little piece of movie history. Some of Hollywood's biggest stars once sat around tying fake barbed wire together by hand. Number 7. One reason James Garner feels so natural in the role of Henley, the smooth-talking scrounger who can obtain almost anything, is because he already understood that personality type from real life. Before becoming a famous actor, Garner served in the military during the Korean War. And according to people who knew him, he developed a reputation very similar to his character in the movie. He knew how to trade favors. He knew how to locate hard-to-find supplies. And he knew how to navigate military life with charm and confidence. Sound familiar? That's basically Henley. To prepare for the role, Garner also interviewed former prisoners of war and listened carefully to their stories about camp life. He wanted to understand how prisoners survived emotionally and socially under constant pressure. What emerged was one of the most likable characters in the entire film. Henley isn't the strongest prisoner, he isn't the toughest, and he isn't the mastermind behind the escape. But he becomes incredibly important because he understands people. He knows how to negotiate, how to improvise, how to adapt. And that survival instinct came naturally to Garner because parts of it reflected his own military experiences. Many war movies focus heavily on combat and explosions, but The Great Escape understood something deeper. Survival often depends just as much on personality, creativity, and emotional resilience as physical strength. Garner captured that perfectly. Even decades later, audiences still connect with Henley because he feels authentic, like someone who could genuinely survive under impossible conditions. Number 8. Behind the scenes of this intense war movie, an entirely different drama was unfolding, and it eventually became one of Hollywood's most talked about relationships. During production, Charles Bronson met actress Jill Ireland, who at the time was married to fellow cast member David McCallum. At first, nobody thought much about their interactions, but according to stories from people close to the production, Bronson jokingly told McCallum that he planned to steal his wife. Everyone laughed. It sounded like harmless humor. But years later, the joke became reality. Jill Ireland and David McCallum eventually divorced, and Ireland later married Bronson in 1968. The two remained together for decades and became one of Hollywood's most recognizable couples. What makes the story especially fascinating is how unlikely it all seemed at the beginning. Nobody standing around the prison camp set during filming could have predicted that a casual comment would eventually lead to a lifelong relationship. And despite the awkward situation, David McCallum handled everything with remarkable professionalism and dignity. He continued building an impressive acting career of his own and later became beloved by millions of television viewers around the world. Meanwhile, Bronson and Ireland developed a powerful personal and professional partnership that lasted until her passing in 1990. It's one of those strange Hollywood stories that sounds too dramatic to be real. But somehow, in the middle of filming one of cinema's greatest war epics, real-life romance quietly changed several lives forever. By the way, if classic Hollywood stories like this are your thing, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into cinema history. Number 9. The tunnel scenes in The Great Escape remain incredibly tense even by modern standards. And the reason they feel so convincing is because the filmmakers went far beyond normal Hollywood set design. Instead of using tiny miniatures or simple camera tricks, the production team built full-size underground tunnel systems inspired directly by the real escape tunnels from Stalag Luft III. That meant wooden support beams, narrow crawl spaces, rail systems, lighting systems, and cramped dimensions designed to mirror historical reality. Actors had to crawl through spaces that genuinely felt tight and uncomfortable, Many scenes were filmed under difficult conditions specifically to preserve realism. Director John Sturges reportedly wanted audiences to feel trapped alongside the prisoners. And it worked. Even today, those scenes create a sense of pressure and anxiety that many modern films struggle to match. Viewers can practically feel the dirt pressing in around the characters. What makes the story even more impressive is that these weren't temporary lightweight props designed only for quick shots. The tunnels were sturdy enough for actors and crew to move through repeatedly during filming. That level of commitment helped create one of the movie's strongest emotional elements. The audience begins to understand just how dangerous and exhausting the real escape must have been. Digging tunnels wasn't exciting adventure work. It was terrifying. One mistake could collapse everything. One careless sound could alert guards. One moment of panic underground could become deadly. The film captured that fear brilliantly because the actors were physically experiencing part of that claustrophobic environment themselves. And once you know how much effort went into those sets, the tunnel scenes become even more impressive to watch. Number 10. Filming movies in the 1960s was very different from modern filmmaking. Safety rules were less strict, digital effects barely existed, and sometimes productions took enormous risks to capture realistic footage. That was definitely true for the train sequences in The Great Escape. Instead of relying on studio tricks, the filmmakers rented a real locomotive and filmed on active railway lines in Germany. Yes, active railway lines. To make the scenes feel authentic, the production purchased old railway cars and modified them to carry cameras and equipment while filming moving sequences. But here's where things became dangerous. The rail line they used remained operational during production. That meant actual trains could appear on the tracks while filming was still happening. To prevent disaster, a railway official traveled with the crew and warned them whenever scheduled trains were approaching. If a train was coming, the crew had to quickly clear the track area before continuing. Just imagine the pressure. Massive cameras, complicated setups, actors performing scenes, and all while knowing a real train could arrive if timing went wrong. Modern productions would probably never attempt something like that today. But back then, filmmakers often accepted extreme levels of risk in pursuit of realism. And honestly, audiences can feel that authenticity on screen. The train sequences carry a gritty physical energy that's difficult to fake. Everything feels tangible because it was tangible. Real tracks, real trains, real movement, real danger. That commitment helped give The Great Escape its unforgettable cinematic texture, something that still separates it from many modern action films today. Number 11. Many war movies are based loosely on historical events, but The Great Escape came from someone who actually experienced life inside the prison camp. The original book was written by Paul Brickhill, a former pilot in the Royal Australian Air Force. During World War II, Brickhill's aircraft was shot down over Tunisia, and he was eventually captured and sent to Stalag Luft III. That means the man writing the story wasn't researching from a distance. He had walked through the camp himself. He knew the atmosphere, the fear, the routines, the uncertainty. He witnessed the prisoners' determination firsthand. Interestingly, Brickhill reportedly suffered from severe claustrophobia and was therefore excluded from participating directly in the real tunnel escape. But even though he couldn't crawl through the tunnels himself, he observed the incredible planning and courage surrounding the operation. After the war ended, he transformed those memories into one of the most influential war books ever written. And that authenticity matters. Audiences often sense when stories are rooted in real emotional truth. The dialogue feels more human. The situations feel more grounded. The characters feel more believable. That's because the story came from lived experience rather than pure imagination. Of course, Hollywood changed many details for dramatic purposes. Certain characters were fictionalized or combined together, and some events were simplified. But underneath the cinematic storytelling remains something powerful. A real story about courage, survival, sacrifice, and hope. That emotional foundation is one reason the movie still resonates with audiences more than 60 years later. Number 12. Sometimes tiny hidden details reveal surprisingly emotional stories. Throughout much of The Great Escape, Steve McQueen can be seen wearing a small gold medallion around his neck. Most viewers never notice it, but the necklace carried personal meaning for the actor. It was reportedly a gift from his wife, Neil Adams. McQueen considered it a lucky charm and preferred keeping it with him during filming. Director John Sturges noticed the medallion on camera and decided it actually fit the character well, so he allowed McQueen to continue wearing it throughout the movie. That small decision created an unexpected emotional layer within the film. Every time audiences watch Hilt sitting alone in isolation, every time he bounces the baseball against the wall, Every time he prepares for another escape attempt, that little gold medallion quietly appears in the frame. A personal object from McQueen's real life became permanently attached to one of cinema's most iconic characters, and honestly, it matches McQueen's screen presence perfectly. Despite playing tough, rebellious characters, there was often a hidden vulnerability underneath his performances. The medallion subtly reinforced that humanity. It reminded viewers that beneath the cool confidence was still a person holding onto something meaningful. It's a tiny detail, but sometimes tiny details are exactly what make legendary performances feel real. If you've been loving these hidden facts and rare details, this is the perfect time to like the video and subscribe because it really helps the channel bring you more content like this. Number 13. Nobody who knows Steve McQueen's reputation will find this next story surprising. During filming in Bavaria, local police reportedly set up speed traps near the production area because cast and crew members were constantly driving too fast on nearby roads. Several people were caught speeding, but according to stories shared later, one person stood out above everyone else. Of course, it was Steve McQueen. The local police chief reportedly joked that although they had stopped several members of the production, McQueen had won first place for highest speed. Honestly, it sounds exactly like something people would expect from him. McQueen loved racing almost as much as acting. Cars, motorcycles, anything fast. Even after becoming one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, he continued participating in professional racing events and dangerous driving competitions. Many people who worked with him believed he felt most alive while moving at high speed. That energy translated directly into his performances. When audiences watch him on screen, there's a sense that he genuinely enjoys risk and freedom. It never feels fake. And stories like the Bavaria speeding incident only strengthened his larger-than-life reputation as the ultimate cool rebel of classic Hollywood. The line between Steve McQueen, the actor, and Steve McQueen, the thrill-seeker, became increasingly blurry over the years, which is probably why audiences still find him fascinating decades later. Number 14. One of the most interesting performances in The Great Escape comes from Hannes Messimer, the actor who portrayed the prison camp commander, Colonel von Luger. Unlike many movie villains, von Luger isn't presented as a cartoon character. He feels intelligent, disciplined, and emotionally conflicted. And there may be a reason for that depth. Because Messimer himself had experienced the horrors of war firsthand. During World War II, the German actor reportedly became a prisoner of war in a Soviet camp. According to several accounts, he later escaped and traveled enormous distances through dangerous territory while trying to survive and return home. That kind of experience changes a person forever. So when Messimer stepped onto the set years later to portray a military officer overseeing prisoners, he wasn't simply inventing emotional reactions from imagination. He understood fear. He understood survival. And he understood the complicated psychological tension that exists between captives and authority figures during wartime. That emotional realism gave his performance unusual complexity. Notice how von Luger often appears tired rather than cruel, frustrated rather than monstrous, professional rather than sadistic. The film subtly presents him as a man trapped by war just like everyone else. And that nuance helps separate The Great Escape from many simpler war films of its era. Instead of reducing every character into pure heroes or villains, the movie explored the emotional exhaustion and moral complexity created by global conflict. Messimer's real-life experiences likely contributed heavily to that authenticity. It's another example of how deeply personal wartime history quietly shaped this production behind the scenes. Number 15. When people think about the cast of The Great Escape, they usually focus on names like Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, or James Garner. But hidden among the actors was someone audiences in Britain recognized for a completely different reason. John Leyton, who played Willie, was one of the biggest pop music stars in the United Kingdom during the early 1960s. Before joining the movie, Leyton had already topped the music charts with his hit song Johnny Remember Me. Teenagers loved him. Radio stations constantly played his music, and many fans knew him primarily as a singer rather than an actor. Casting a pop star in a serious war drama might sound risky today, but surprisingly, it worked extremely well. Leyton delivered a grounded and believable performance alongside far more experienced actors. What's even more interesting is that he also recorded a song connected to the movie during production. However, despite his musical success, that song never became nearly as famous as the film's legendary orchestral theme composed by Elmer Bernstein. Still, Leyton's presence gives the movie an unusual cultural connection to the early 1960s. At the time, audiences weren't simply watching a war film. They were also seeing one of Britain's hottest music celebrities sharing the screen with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. It's a fascinating reminder that pop culture and cinema have always been closely connected, even long before modern blockbuster franchises and celebrity crossovers became common. And for younger viewers watching today, it's almost impossible to realize that one of the prisoners inside the camp was once the equivalent of a major chart-topping music idol. And while we continue uncovering these incredible secrets, take a second to subscribe and join our movie-loving community for more legendary film breakdowns every week. Number 16. For much of its runtime, The Great Escape feels adventurous and hopeful. The prisoners joke with one another, they outsmart guards, they plan daring escapes, and audiences naturally begin rooting for them to succeed. But then comes the devastating ending. Many of the captured escapees are executed after being recaptured by the Gestapo, and heartbreakingly, that part of the story was based on real events. In March 1944, 76 prisoners successfully escaped from Stalag Luft III through underground tunnels, but only 3 men ultimately reached safety. 50 of the captured prisoners were later murdered on direct orders from Adolf Hitler. That shocking act violated international law and horrified many military officials at the time. The executions did not happen exactly the same way shown in the movie. In reality, they occurred gradually in smaller groups over several days. However, the emotional truth remained horrifyingly accurate. After the war ended, investigations were launched to identify those responsible. Several German officials connected to the killings were eventually tried and executed for war crimes. The filmmakers could have exaggerated these moments dramatically for emotional manipulation. Instead, they handled the tragedy with surprising restraint. There are no huge speeches, no over-the-top emotional breakdowns, no melodramatic music overwhelming the scenes. The sadness arrives quietly, and somehow, that restraint makes the ending even more powerful. Because beneath all the excitement and adventure, the audience suddenly remembers something deeply important. These weren't fictional superheroes. They were real people. Real prisoners, real soldiers, real human beings who risked everything for freedom. That emotional weight is one reason the movie still affects audiences so strongly decades later. Number 17. Even people who have never seen The Great Escape often recognize its music immediately. That unforgettable marching theme composed by Elmer Bernstein became one of the most iconic movie scores in cinema history. But what many viewers don't realize is how carefully Bernstein designed the soundtrack to reflect the personalities and emotions of the characters. Rather than simply creating generic war music, he developed unique musical styles connected to different moments in the story. Some scenes feel playful and optimistic, others feel tense and suspenseful, others quietly capture loneliness and determination. Bernstein reportedly described the central theme of the score using one powerful word: indomitability. In other words, the refusal to give up. That spirit runs throughout the soundtrack. The famous march doesn't sound depressing or tragic despite the harsh prison setting. Instead, it feels energetic, rebellious, and hopeful. The music almost sounds like the prisoners are psychologically resisting captivity itself, and audiences connected with that emotional energy immediately. Over the years, the theme became hugely popular far beyond the movie. In the United Kingdom, sports fans even adopted it as a stadium anthem during football matches. That's an extraordinary achievement for a film score. Very few movie themes become part of wider popular culture in that way. But Bernstein's composition captured something timeless: the human desire to keep fighting forward no matter how difficult circumstances become. Even today, hearing those opening notes instantly transports viewers back into the world of the film. That's the power of truly unforgettable music. Number 18. For decades, movie fans have debated one strange rumor connected to The Great Escape. Did a young Harrison Ford secretly appear in the film as an extra? The rumor focuses on a brief background shot involving a young man wearing a Nazi youth uniform during one of the train scenes. Some viewers insist the extra strongly resembles Ford before he became famous, and honestly, the resemblance is noticeable enough to keep the theory alive. But there's one major problem. The movie was filmed in Germany using many local extras, and there's no solid evidence placing Ford anywhere near the production at the time. In addition, careful viewers have pointed out physical differences between the mystery extra and the future Indiana Jones star. Still, the rumor continues surviving generation after generation. Why? Because movie fans love hidden connections between legendary actors. The idea that two cinematic icons, Steve McQueen and Harrison Ford, might secretly share a frame years before Ford became famous feels too entertaining for people to let go. And honestly, that's part of what makes classic films so enjoyable. Over time, they develop myths and mysteries beyond the original story itself. Fans search every corner of the frame looking for hidden details, accidental appearances, and forgotten secrets. Whether the rumor is true or not, it has become part of the movie's larger cultural legacy. And at this point, the mystery is probably more fun than the answer. Number 19. The influence of The Great Escape stretches far beyond war movies. Its DNA can be found in countless films, television shows, and even animated movies released decades later. The basic formula proved irresistible. A group of very different personalities trapped together, a carefully planned escape, humor mixed with tension, and audiences emotionally investing in every obstacle along the way. Movies like Escape from Alcatraz clearly borrowed elements from its structure and suspense style, but one of the most surprising examples is actually the animated film Chicken Run. Yes, the movie about chickens escaping a farm. Many critics and movie fans jokingly describe it as the Great Escape with chickens, and honestly, the comparison is surprisingly accurate. Secret tunnels, escape planning, distinct personalities, constant surveillance from guards. The inspiration is impossible to miss. Beyond direct references, the movie also became a television tradition in several countries. Families returned to it repeatedly across generations. Parents introduced it to children. Children later introduced it to their own kids. That type of cultural longevity is extremely rare. Most movies slowly fade from public attention over time, but The Great Escape continued finding new audiences decade after decade because its themes remained universally powerful. Hope, freedom, friendship, defiance against impossible odds. Those ideas never become outdated, and that emotional timelessness transformed the film from a successful war movie into a permanent piece of global movie culture.
Number 20.
Now we arrive at the story many fans find hardest to believe. That legendary motorcycle jump near the end of the movie, the moment where the rider launches toward the fence in a desperate attempt to escape, became one of the most famous stunts ever filmed. For years, many audiences assumed Steve McQueen performed the jump himself. After all, McQueen loved motorcycles. He performed many of his own riding scenes, and the sequence became deeply connected to his image as Hollywood's ultimate action star. But the truth is more complicated. The actual jump was performed by stunt rider Bud Ekins, a close friend of McQueen and an extremely talented motorcycle expert. During practice, McQueen reportedly attempted the jump himself but crashed badly enough that the production's insurance company refused to let him try it again during filming. So Ekins stepped in, and incredibly, he nailed the stunt in a single take. Think about the pressure involved. One chance, one dangerous jump, one moment that would become cinematic history forever. Ekins succeeded perfectly. The editing blended the footage so seamlessly that audiences remained convinced for years that McQueen had performed the stunt himself. Even McQueen later admitted publicly on television that the famous jump wasn't actually him. But here's what makes the story beautiful. The scene still represents McQueen's spirit completely, because the sequence wasn't only about celebrity or ego. It was about freedom, about refusing to surrender, about risking everything for one impossible chance. And Bud Ekins, a relatively unknown stunt performer compared to major Hollywood stars, quietly helped create one of the most enduring images in movie history before returning to normal life afterward. There's something strangely fitting about that, because beneath all the fame and excitement, The Great Escape has always been a story about ordinary people displaying extraordinary courage. More than 60 years after its release, The Great Escape still feels alive. The performances remain unforgettable. The suspense still works. The music still gives audiences chills. And the emotional impact remains just as powerful as ever. But maybe the reason the movie continues surviving generation after generation goes deeper than action scenes or famous actors. At its core, the film speaks to something universal: the desire for freedom, the refusal to lose hope, and the courage to keep pushing forward even when the odds seem impossible. Behind every tunnel, every escape plan, and every unforgettable scene were real human experiences that shaped this legendary story. That authenticity can still be felt in every frame, and that's why audiences continue returning to this classic year after year. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history behind The Great Escape, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us which fact surprised you the most. And if there's another classic movie you'd like us to explore next, let us know below. Until next time, the credits may roll, but the conversation never ends.